Hello everybody, my name is David Arismendy and welcome back to a small talk about everything. This time it's episode 2 and we're gonna be discussing chapter 1 of A Hypothesis of Everything. This time, as usual, we'll be joined by Riley, who will be answering questions and giving us a little bit more of information than what you might find in the book. So this time, this is chapter 1, Your Psyche and the hero of your story. Hello Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm great. It's good to be here with you guys again and here in my place. So I hope you enjoy it. We've got a little bit better lighting going on. We're not shooting in the daytime where it has a big bright light this time. So hope it's easier on your eyes and I hope you're comfortable with everything we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestions on the episode 1. It made a big difference and we will appreciate that you keep us posted on any comments that you might have regarding the quality or regarding things that you might want us to discuss about. Maybe if you have questions there, leave them in the comment description, in the comment box. Okay, Eric, so how about we begin?
Let's go.
Okay, so this time I have a set of 13 questions for you on chapter 1, which is what works as an introduction to the book. If you haven't read it yet, I invite you to give it a read, take a look at it before watching this video. So you will follow more on the information that we will approach. So, Eric, and the main concepts all along the book, which are the hero of your psyche, your fear identity, and the seventh dimension structure that you elaborate later on in the book, right? So in this chapter 1, we will approach those concepts, and I want to ask you on your ideas, on how you interpret those ideas that you present to the readers, right. And people, so people can approach the book with more background on right. What you thought, what you were thinking when writing, right? So, in the book, there are 2 different types of hero, right? Your psyche's hero, which is the inner version of your psyche identity and what you want to be, and the external heroes, right? Mm-hmm. Which could be understood as the real or fictional personas we look up to, right?
Right.
So is that correct?
Yes, and the name of the chapter in English is called Your Psyche and the Hero of Your Story. So this is, for me, there isn't really a differentiation between the hero of your psyche and the heroes that you identify with, whether they're historical or fictional, or whether they're people in your own life. Because when we identify heroes, this is why Disney is so great, is because it identifies what children want to be their heroes, partly because we don't identify anything out here that's not inside of here first. Like knowing the truth, and the truth will set you free, partly because you know the truth because there's an element of that truth that's inside of you that you can connect with. So your hero, whether they're fictional, non-fictional, historical, they still represent something that's inside of you that you connect with. And whether it's physically, or maybe it's an ideal like, man, I want to be strong like so-and-so, or I want to be beautiful like so-and-so, or I want to be, I want to make a difference like Mother Teresa or somebody. It's just, we connect with those heroes, and even though they're the hero of your psyche, they're still real heroes to you. And the reason for this book is for you to be able to move into a place where you can actually identify those heroes out there as being the hero that's already inside of you, that's basically needs to maybe come out or be let go at some level to be set free.
All right. So it's not actually 2 different kinds of hero. It's the same hero. Is your hero looking at everybody else's hero, right, and finding things that relate to them.
Right. It's like looking in a mirror. Like you want to you ever seen like a dog that looks in a mirror and starts barking because it thinks it's something else until it figures out maybe it's himself. I don't know if dogs ever figure that out, but it's like us barking at something different that's we're identifying with, and then we figure out, oh, that's me. Okay, so maybe like looking in a mirror to check yourself out as the hero.
Okay, pretty cool. So, in the book, when you approach this topic, you talk about one of your favorite fictional heroes, which is Alita Battle Angel, from the movie Alita Battle Angel from 2019. right?
Yes.
So you say that Alita is uniquely qualified because she has nothing to lose, right? So no attachment to the past.
Right.
This is a very cool trait to find in a real person, right? So tell us about non-fictional heroes. What do they look like?
Non-fictional heroes look like, I think that non-fictional heroes are heroes that are bigger than life because they cross barriers, they cross boundaries between this hero that's a hero of this little bit of this and this hero that might be the hero of this little bit. Then fictional heroes just cover everything, like Harry Potter. Oh my goodness, what a hero, what a fictional character. Yet it's a character that we want to identify with. Like, okay, my parents are gone. I feel like I'm all alone. Whether you really are alone or not, you still have those feelings of not belonging. I'm kind of a dorky person in public, and I'm not sure if I'm going to fit into this part of the school or this part of the school. So whatever, I'm just going to go be who I am, which is Harry Potter. And so that's it for me. An Alita Battle Angel, not having anything in the past to hold her down and to limit her, is how I want to be. Not that I am at all. My past governs so much of who I am and now, and probably will be in the future. But I love the idea of almost having the amnesia of the past, where you can move forward into something without being limited by who that person was yesterday or a year ago or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Did that answer the question pretty good? No. Yeah.
Well, it approached a question that occurred to me when reading.
Okay.
Which is okay. You say in the life of Riley, right,
Mm-hmm.
that you have several non-fictional heroes, right?
Right.
People you look up to, and
Right.
I was wondering, okay, so this guy, what kind of people does he look up to, right? What kind of traits
great.
does he find in real people?
Right.
Because I was thinking of what are my heroes, right? And I would happen to think in fictional heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they, as you said, what Disney does is they take one ideal that we have and explodes it, right? And puts every single character representing one idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we humans, we are very plural. So our readers and myself might think that, well, how can I ever look up to someone as a hero for my story, right?
Right. Exactly. And can you tell me some of your non-fictional heroes?
Well, some of my non-fictional heroes, that's funny. Well, there's this guy from a Facebook page. I can't actually remember his name, but I remember the story behind him. I'm pretty fond of linguistics and everything, all on communication skills and everything. And this guy started as everybody else learning a second language, right? And he loved it, and then a third language, and then a fifth language, then a 10th language. And then he realizes that there are more to that than vocal languages. So he jumps into Braille and starts learning sign language and all of that.
Yeah.
So it was like, wow, I would like to be that guy, able to communicate with a lot of people and caring about communicating with different people that might have, but that might be deaf, right, or blind or something. So I like that trait. So I think that would be a real hero. I don't really know the guy, but I like that trait.
Yeah, and that's me as well. That person is making a difference, is creating his life to actually be a contribution to humanity in some way, or a section of humanity, or even his own family. That's what attracts me most, is that people risk themselves, or maybe deny their future of what could be their version of success, or even our version of success, to make a difference in another way that is so much more successful because they got a great story. And I think that's my idea of a hero, is someone who creates stories, and stories of making a difference for other people. In my book, in my chapter on Burundi and the life of Riley, it talks about several people in Burundi that, in the midst of the aftermath of genocide and a lot of conflict between tribes and tensions that there were people that were placing themselves in really dangerous territories and really dangerous situations to have a peace school that incorporated intentionally like the different tribes, the different classes of people, the different religions, and then they would do practice stuff inside of their education that would train the students how to practice peace. Like they would take some type of tea together every day and serve each other and do things that were practically where peace would abound in an educational setting, because that's what they wanted to do. And this particular school director believed that if they could train a child when it's young, in fact, that's their motto was, in Kirundi, it's Igiti Kigirogwa Kikirigito, which means straighten a tree when it is young. And so that was her motive. Her motive and her motto was to take these young children and to teach them the way of equality. And it's almost been, since 1993. They're all grown up. And not that she had all the students in the whole country. She only had a very, very small percentage, but that small percentage actually got to make a difference on a broader scale. So people like that, people that chose to, a nurse that chose at a hospital that killed all their doctors, he chose to start a nursing school because he knew the doctors would never come back. So he started a nursing school and became the director of a nursing school. Then, and also with education for HIV/AIDS, to go to the villages and do presentations on teaching communities about the AIDS virus and things like that, which is, just normal people don't do that stuff. We wake up and we go do our work and we die, and then people put us in the ground and, they say what they say and then they go eat somewhere. So this is being able to honor people in a way that they made a contribution. That's kind of what I would like myself to be. In fact, I think everyone can do. And especially like that guy that, wants to learn languages and wants to help people that don't speak spoken language.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow.
Yeah, you mentioned a something that I find very interesting, which is the doing something even though it might not make a huge difference, right? Like in the big frame, but in the larger picture. But you still do it because you think it's the correct thing to do, or it's something funny, like maybe this guy, right? Maybe he didn't want to help anybody, but he thought it was good, and he did it anyway, right? So this director, I'm sure she was very aware that she will only dedicate those years to raise maybe 20 kids, right? But it's still, she felt like it was worth it. Yeah. I mean, otherwise she wouldn't have done it, right? So I think that's a big message in this part of finding a real hero is someone who does something even though they know it might not make the big difference, like a huge difference, but it will make a huge difference for someone, right? Or for a particular group, or for some particular area of knowledge, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty cool.
Yeah. That's the answer to that.
Okay. So, in the context of, I quote, "You are the hero of your own story," what makes your inner hero, like Eric Riley's hero, uniquely qualified?
Okay, Eric Riley's hero, uniquely qualified, is I identified with Alita Battle Angel, partly because at the beginning of the movie she was thrown away. Like she was thrown down from a city that hovered over the earth called Balam, or what was it? Zalam, I think. Anyway, so she was just trash, and she was found as trash. And I feel like that's somehow, sometimes we wake up thinking that, like we don't have a big self-esteem or a way to get through things. And we think that we're not necessarily worth a lot to the people around us, but we still go through our day. And so I think there's a new archetype in literature called the trash archetype, partly because I see it there. And also if you see Toy Story 4, one of the main characters is this little spork that's decorated to be a toy, comes to life, and his name is Forky. And Forky his instinct is, when he becomes alive, is to go find a trash can and throw himself away. And Woody has to be falling all around and just keep him from throwing himself in the trash all the time, because that's where Forky wants to be. So between those two movies of Alita Battle Angel and Toy Story 4, I think there's another archetype that, and for some reason I identify with that. Like there's a possibility that whoever we are in whatever community or society, that we don't have much or we don't come from much, but there is something more that we're meant to be. Unlike Forky, Alita Battle Angel knew that there was something more in her DNA to be something, and called a battle angel, and that was in her DNA. And her job on the planet and the story was to be about the business of discovering who that person was. And I don't know if she ever discovered it completely in the movie. In fact, I think even in the story series, there's still a continual discovery of Alita Battle Angel and who she is, who actually she is in the world, which is perfect, because that's who we are. Is we don't know what our past is all the time, and we shouldn't even care, because all we got is the future and the DNA of this hero that we can live into if we choose to. So I think that's my answer to that question.
Okay, so now we have what makes Eric's Riley hero uniquely qualified, right? So what's the biggest problem he faces?
The biggest problems Eric faces is the fear identity that was actually in this chapter of discouragement, of entitlement. Entitlement is the biggest enemy in my life, because I wake up entitled and I deserve something, and usually it's deserving something that isn't earned. I go to sleep with entitlement. I wake up from dreams that are about entitlement. Every time you look and and it's also about sufficiency or insufficient, because that's kind of why we have mirrors around, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't look in the mirror very often, but as I get older, I'm very present to whatever insufficiency that age brings. So, and also whatever body style that I have, which I'm pretty fat, and whatever sufficiency conversation that is as well. Inside of the reverse of that as well, you deserve something to compensate. So there's the coping mechanisms, the everything that comes with that. So I think the problem that the hero faces in me is the problem of sufficiency and dealing with this voice inside of me that says I deserve something better or I deserve something different. And later on, or we can talk about gratitude now. The thing that's made the biggest difference, is that coming up next in the next question?
Yeah, it's coming up in the elements of love, but okay. If you want to talk about that now,
let's do that now.
Let's do an introduction to that.
Because also what makes this hero uniquely qualified is practicing gratitude. And gratitude has been such a huge part of my life, especially recently, and practicing it like every day. I have what's called a gratitude zone, which if you well, that's the next chapter. Actually, we're going to be talking about that more. But yeah. I'll give you a peek into it. Gratitude zones is like a practice of gratitude and having a place specifically that's private and it's yours, and you practice gratitude. Mine is the bathroom. Every time I go to the bathroom, there is an intention to think of things that I can be grateful for, and it happens all the time now. In fact, I wake up thinking of things that I'm grateful for, and then all the way throughout the day, whenever I use a bathroom, is about gratitude. And what's so interesting is that whenever the urge comes in my body to need to go to the bathroom, that's when I'm starting to be like, okay, what can I be thankful for about? So it's starting to expand in more and more in my life. And there's so many elements of that have really interested this hero to be happy and to be content and to feel fortunate in this world, and to walk around feeling fortunate in this world, and respond to friends in a way that lets them know how fortunate I am. So gratitude has been such a huge factor in making this hero uniquely qualified to handle the problems that went through. So it's a little bit of an advertisement for next podcast is going to be about gratitude all the way through it. So yeah,
so
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Stay in. And Eric, I would like to discuss a short part of what you just said, okay, of feeling like you deserve more, like you deserve better as part of entitlement, right? But for some people, that's a way to cope with low self-esteem, right? Like you need to be aware that you deserve better, that you deserve something good for your life, that something might be better and you can make it better, right? So how does that talks to it being part of entitlement?
Right. So, wow, that's a great question. Now, I know that most of what we do to help people and to affirm them doesn't really speak to their hero. It speaks to their fear identity. And even to affirm them in that way, like you deserve this, you deserve something better. I have a friend of mine that sent me a link to a nighttime thing that he listens to that's all about I'm strong, people like me, I'm attractive. And coming from a place of maybe those things aren't true, but I've got to convince myself, so I'm going to repeat these things until they are true. And the other part of the challenge of that is every single one of those statements is something about me and my identity and my ego and building me up instead of going, hey, well, it may not be all about me anyway. So those types of affirmations we give to people that to comfort them or pat them on the back that says, hey, you deserve this, or hey, you know, you're pretty, you're a special person. That really feeds the fear identity. And I'm not sure if that's the hero talking or if that's just us being what's called codependent and trying to, you know, be friendly and getting people to love us when maybe they don't even deserve it. Maybe we don't deserve it. I'm saying gratitude is the thing to go. You just got to be grateful. Teach them how to be grateful. Thank them. Thank them for being here and thank them for who they are. Acknowledge them. Here's a part, I'm not sure if I'm going to put this in the book, but it's really important, is when you go to a store, you see a box on the shelf of a product, and you get it down off that box because it says what it is inside. Flour, oil, or maybe it's a candy bar and we need to know how many calories are in it. So we read the box and we see the ingredients of that box. So we know the ingredients of what's inside of there by what's on the outside, right? But the thing inside doesn't know what it is. It just thinks, oh, okay, I'm just this powder. Okay, I guess I'm just this powder, so I'm not any good. Well, it takes people around you that are reading the outside of the box and said, no, you're not just powder, or you're not just this gooey stuff that just add water or whatever. You are this. You have protein in you. You have, you cause people to have strength, or you're delicious. So people need to hear who they are as we see them from the outside of the box, because big chances your fear identity that's on the inside isn't telling the world all the good things about yourself. You need to let people tell you, like, truthfully, not like if you're a really mean, ugly person. People don't need to be telling you that, hey, you're a really sweet guy. No, they probably need to be telling that you're a mean, ugly person, and you don't have to be. Your hero isn't that, but your fear identity is taken over. So wake up. We need to, that's actually going to come in another question probably. So,
well, but I'm glad you go into that this part, because it all connects to the same, right? And it's still the same chapter, and it's still the same book, and it's still the same author, right?
Yeah.
So it all comes down to explaining the same amount of concepts, right? The same group of concepts. Okay, Eric. So thank you for this first part, and I would like, in this part, we'll do a short commercial break for you to thank our sponsor, now talking about gratitude, right? To thank I Learn Language School for their support and for sponsoring this video series. So we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. And Eric, are you ready for question 5?
Yes.
Okay, great. So at this time, I will ask you as the audience, to think of yourselves, right? So you might notice that you have had some opportunities, such as maybe you were born in a wealthy family, or you are educated, you're beautiful, right? And you might see, or you might think that because you have had those opportunities, your hero's likely success is higher, right? Making your life less, your story less interesting, right? So I would want to ask Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, the chapter is called Your Psyche and the Hero of Your Story, which also includes something in your psyche called a fear identity. So everyone has their own demons, and because you have a certain level of maybe opportunity or prestige, that you have your own demons, and your life is still about having to deal with not belonging. So I'm calling bullshit on all of this, is that we all share the same thing of having a future that is likely going to be really boring or really, and it doesn't matter how successful we are, because we all have a story that includes trauma. I want to tell about a friend of mine that first time I came down here. It was in December of that year, and I didn't live where I live now. I lived in a townhome community, and I was walking around wondering why everybody had all these little candles that were being lit. And it was in December, of course. It was a festival of little candles. And I didn't know what it was because, I came from the United States, had no idea anything about Latin culture. So there's all these kids running around, and I tried to mumble out in Spanish, what is the day, what's the festival today? And she responded in English. And she said, it's a day of little candles. I said, oh, okay. Oh, so you speak a little bit of English? She said, yeah, I go to school, I learn a little English. She was probably in, a grade school type person, maybe 13 or 14, I don't know. So she happened to be one of my neighbors down the road from me. And now 4 years later, she's in university, just amazing person. I've always thought that she was really, elegant, carried herself, spoke really well. And I asked her some of these questions about who's your favorite hero? And her response was Shrek, that her hero is Shrek. So I was a little bit amused by that, and I'm still a little bit amused at that, because she identifies herself as not being someone who's amazing and beautiful. And she comes from an amazing family I love dearly, and that have the money they need to travel, to be well connected in society, and their extended family, their grandparents, they all love everybody so much inside that family. It's just so impressive. And then to know that this person inside that family doesn't relate to herself as someone who is immediately amazing is wow. Okay, so it doesn't matter who you are, that you still have, your limitations, and we still have to deal with what we have to deal with.
Right. So bullshit?
Bullshit.
Okay. Okay, Eric. So here we're going to approach to the fifth dimension. I know this chapter 1 is sort of an introduction. That's an introduction to every dimension, right? Mm-hmm. But in the chapter 3, you will find a detailed elaboration on every dimension. So that's why we're going sort of quickly over the dimensions, right? But I would like to stop at the fifth dimension and talk about something you discussed there. So in the fifth dimension, you state, and I quote, language authors and manipulates all of the other dimensions. In the third dimension, things exist, but they do not become real until they are given a name, right? So this is connected to the definition of reality as agreement and language that you will elaborate later on. Would you mind to explore that difference between something existing and something being real? Right.
Okay, now my question is, what do you know that exists without having a name? And it's nothing. There's nothing we don't know exists that doesn't have a name. We used to think, now most of you are going to be too young to know that we used to think the atom was the smallest thing on the planet. Now we discovered that an atom has a nucleus and protons, and then there's something smaller called a quarks, And they might have, is there something smaller that we know about now? I'm about 10 years old on this.
Well, all I know is quarks, but I think quarks can be divided, but have not been seen yet.
Right.
Yeah, we're on it.
Yeah. And so reality actually expands as we understand more. We know somewhat about the universe, but we used to think that the universe was, okay, there was a time where the world was flat. We didn't know it was round, and then we discovered it was round. There was a time, and I mentioned this in the book, that before 2006, there were 9 planets in our solar system, and all of our school textbooks had it. All of our tests had how many planets and named the planets, and Pluto wasn't included in there. After 2006, Pluto isn't included. Why? Because the definition of the name planet, the definition of planet was changed. So, because the agreement of the definition of that word changed, that Pluto got tossed out of our list of planets, right? Our solar system, and they found a bunch of other little heavenly bodies that, a lot of heavenly bodies in our solar system that aren't planets or whatever either. So they're having to, as they learn new things, reality keeps changing too. So reality is language plus agreement. And I agree with that with all my heart, because our agreement changes all the time. And look at media, look at social media, and the things that we convince other people that is real or not real. We rewrite history. We had a little conversation about people who won the war are the heroes, and we don't know who lost the wars. I was talking about the World Cup. Who won the last World Cup? And we might remember, but do we remember who got second place of the 2 or 3 World Cups ago? Probably not. And they're not the hero because they didn't win. Does that not mean that they were any good? They're great. They could have won the World Cup, but they lost that one game. They won all the other ones, or most of the other ones, and they lost that one game. So they're not the heroes. And that writes history. So there's an agreement that this is the best team because they won, or this is the best person because they conquered. Well, and they may not be the best person at all. In fact, They're probably not. So we had conversations about people in history that were pretty bad people, but they got credited with being heroic characters because they won the war.
Right, and that's something very important to understand in this book that I think changes the way you approach the reading of the book. Is when you talk about what's real and what reality is, and when something becomes real or enters our reality, that it is not something of reality as in the physics, right? Everything that is there, but reality is how we perceive what is there, right? What's out there,
right. And
how we perceive also our human relations. That's what's real, right? Like my partner is cheating on me. That's real for me, right? And it might not be something that exists, but it's real because that's what I perceive, and that's the agreement that I've made with maybe myself, right? With my own fear identity, my own insecurities. That's real for me, and I will respond to that, right?
Yeah. Or
even if it does not exist.
Yeah, it could be worse. It may not exist, but you had enough people in your life that told you that your partner is cheating on you, that you believed it, and believed them because there was 3 or 4 people that said it, and it may not even exist in reality, but you believed it because there's agreement around it. Understand?
Right.
That's gossiping, by the way, and there's repeating rumors that aren't necessarily true. So truth matters. So just go after that. And if it's evident, if it's real, if they really are cheating on you, yeah, there's an opportunity to do something. But if all of your friends agree that your partner's cheating on you, then yeah, you got problems. You got to actually,
either change friends, have a talk with your friends, or have a talk with your partner. But have the talk, right? Yeah. Communication is key.
Yeah. And talk with your partner and get new friends.
Right. Okay. So before going into the 7th dimension, right? So we will make a small jump into language for you, for those of you who have not read the book. The 5th dimension is language. Mm-hmm. The 6th is responsibility, which is when you take language and apply action to it, right? And then you take responsibility for it. And then you talk about a seventh dimension made out by truth and love, right? But before we go into that, I would like you to explain another concept, another important concept, which is the counterpart of the hero of your story, right? Which is the fear protein in your psyche, and the core of your fear identity, right? So I would like that you please enlighten us a little bit more on these concepts.
Okay, I think part of the human condition is something is wrong here, or insufficiency. And I believe, this is my personal belief, that it comes from the time that we learn how to say no, which is about 18 months or before 2 years old. We learn how to say no, and we know that no is a word that is supposed to protect us. No, that's hot. No, don't stand there, you could fall off. No is a protective word. And then we hear no in other contexts as well to manipulate us. So when we not only understand the word no as a protective word, but we understand it to be a word that we can use to manipulate others, I believe there's an introduction into our psyche called the fear identity. And it is mostly, at the top of the list, of course, is entitlement as the elements of that, because we're like, no, I deserve this instead. No, I'm not going to do that. And it's really important that we really start understanding that the impact of that, because it doesn't have a happy ending. The fear identity, the fear protein, I call it the fear protein, has those elements in it. Here's our list. Elements of fear are entitlement, survival, equity, which is fair, not fair, and egocentrism, and morality that judges good from bad. So those are in the fear protein, those are the elements that make up the fear protein. Now they have a bunch of symptoms as well, as which you can read in the book, but that's what the fear protein is. Coming from our understanding of no, manipulating others with no, and then watching those things come alive in our life that have nothing to do with the hero of your story.
So is that fear protein part of ourselves as the hero is, or is it something that we get, like a sickness or something?
It is. That's a perfect way to do it. It is a sickness. It's kind of a cancer that we get about 2 years old. When it isn't part of us, all right? I believe that the seventh dimension and all of the dimensions are actually part of who we are, right? And the fear protein is introduced to us by something else, but it's global. It's not something that any human can get away with, because it's like in the Bible it actually talks about the carnal nature, or some type of nature that is human. It's kind of almost like that in a psychological way. It's just it's no. I've never seen any tribe, any culture, any society get away from that. We all are born into something called I deserve something, or something's wrong here, something's insufficient, and we have to deal with that. That's part of the life we live. Well, this, of course, this is what the book is about, is hopefully to give you some victory over it.
Right. So let me get something straight, right? Okay. So this fear protein is not something that's part of our human nature, but we all have it, and we all learn to have it, right? So it is, in a way, part of our human nature, right? Because if every human has it, every society is built around it, right? Either responding to it or either getting over it, right? Conquering it. So some of other things in developmental theories in children are like that, right? Like, for example, what you mentioned earlier, of looking yourself in a mirror and realizing that it is yourself. It's something that we are able to do in time, right? When we are born, we will be able to do that, but not quite yet, right?
Yeah, right.
So this is something like that. I would like to think of this as not part of ourselves, that we do not have to live to respond to it, right? But we all need to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You're right. That's exactly it. And that's why it's called, your psyche and the hero of your story. And that's why you do identify that there's trauma in your life, because life is traumatic. People die. There's disappointment that happens. People reject you. You get turned down for things that you're really hopeful about and really expect about, and things happen, and they're not meant to be easy things, but it's how we deal with it that's the different. And we can deal with it with our fear identity, and I may be jumping ahead with the book here because that's sort of toward the end. We can deal with it as our fear identity, or we can deal with it as the hero of your story. And trauma gives you the opportunity to do that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more too.
Okay. Before we go to our second commercial break, I would like to explore a little bit more of that characteristic of the fear protein and the fear identity not being really part of ourselves, right? Like it's part of ourselves, but we are not born with it, right? Can you, as the one who's approaching this concepts, right, and presenting these concepts to the rest of the world, would you recommend to get rid of the fear protein, like to try to kill it?
Okay, I would recommend to try, and I will let you know now from a person who's lived a pretty long life, is that you won't. It is impossible. In fact, if you see the graphic of the book is actually on YouTube. At the end, you have the fear identity. I compare. Does this come up later about the cell, or does this part now?
No, you can talk. I mean, okay. This is your interview. Right. Feel free to do.
Okay.
Over the topic.
This is. I compare the psyche to the human cell. The human cell is healthy when it can have things coming into it, and then it can discard things. Right. So when a cell becomes unhealthy, things have a hard time getting in. Only a few things get in, and then because the membrane gets crusty and tough, and then things can't go out. So it's just a useless cell because things need to come in, things need to go out. So I compare our human psyche to the human cell. Our human psyche is meant to have a permeable membrane where things come into our psyche and things go out of our psyche. We get external stimuli, and the things that go out in my model are actions, responsibility, language that is effective, and also with responsibility, a sense of meaning. But those things actually are part of the transference of things into and out of our psyche. And then I draw a nucleus that's the core of the core of our psyche, and I call that the hero, the core hero. And inside of that, I draw a DNA symbol, which is in the illustration of the book. It's the intertwining helix, the double helix of love and truth intertwined together as the DNA, as the hero core's DNA, love and truth. So the nucleus of the cell of the psyche is the hero. And then I draw another circle, and it has teeth in it, and I put angry eyes above it. That's not because it's angry, but it's just aggressive and wants to eat, and that's the fear protein. That's that. And once it's there, it actually never leaves. At the end of the book, at the end of the chapter, it might as well be a book. At the end of the chapter, I draw this. I have an illustration of the psyche, and it's grayed out. It's a little bit gray, but it'll never disappear. Just like I said before, I've been doing some really excellent work for eliminating this fear protein, and I feel like it's going to. Gratitude is the way to go, actually. So I've been practicing gratitude, but I still wake up with entitlement. I still go to sleep with entitlement. I still go to sleep with this egocentric, it's all about me thing. So you're never going to get away with that, get away from that completely. But I'm suggesting that you try. And if you are successful 100%, please write a book.
Yeah,
please
contributes to the rest of us
yes.
with that knowledge, because we will need it, and future generations will surely need it.
Yeah.
And if not, tell us your story anyway of trying, right? Sometimes the thing is walking the road, not getting there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You're right.
Okay, so thank you, Rick, for this second part, and we'll be right back with you after our second commercial break. Thank you very much. Thanks. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so question number 9. Quote, "The seventh dimension springs forth from a source deep within us that sometimes feel lost or smothered. This is very similar to the description of what your hero represents, right? And its position and its relation to the fear protein, right? So it's placed inside of the cell representation, right? But could this seventh dimension be an actual embodiment of the hero,
All right.
or I mean the other way around?"
I would like to think so, because I would like to think that your core hero can do everything that is in the seventh dimension. However, the seventh dimension for me is like the cosmos or the universe. There's only so much that we are able to know about it just now. That it is above our highest enlightenment, that there's something that's higher than we can even know about it. I compare it to a possibility like the Bible. And the Israelites had a name for God that couldn't be spoken. And for some reason they think, okay, well, it's too reverent to be spoken. Yes, that's actually true. But it was also a name to be unspoken because God was not supposed to be contained in a name or a description. There's something higher than God could ever be expressed that God is. And I believe that with your highest ideal, whatever your highest ideal is, with family, if your highest ideal is family, it needs to have the characteristics of an ideal that's actually beyond you and above you, that you can spend your whole life attaining to the ideal of family and probably never reach it because it's just so high. And it's so high that it's almost unnameable. And for your hero to be contained in a name, I think it's kind of well, it's short-sighted, first of all, but it also might be kind of dangerous because it allows that hero to have an alter ego and to become a villain as well. So
right,
yeah,
the dangers of the categorical thinking, if any of you are acquainted with that, is actually that when you compartmentalize something, is that the word?
Compartmentalize.
Compartmentalize
Right.
things, and these concepts, right, that are supposed to be the greatest ideals in our lives, then we take the risk of having ideals that are very limited, right? That end up being insufficient as well, and run out of ideal, right? Sort of.
Right. And for you spiritual people, especially your Protestants out there, there is a concept called spiritual gifts that God gives some people to be such and such people. Some people have the gift of healing or hospitality or prophecy. And what I see inside of that paradigm, inside of that model, is that people choose what's convenient for them or what makes them look the best, whether it's healing or prophecy or service or hospitality. And then they start allowing their fear identity to move in around it and start getting entitlement around that. Oh, I'm the healer of the group, I should be doing this, or I'm the one that's hospitable, not you. So there becomes, inside of that label of who we are as a gifted Christian, say I know some of this is probably sacrilegious to you and I just don't care, is that God is bigger. Your highest ideal is bigger, and whatever your highest ideal calls you to do in the moment, you do it. If one moment is being hospitable, that's fine. If one moment is being service, that's fine. If one minute is being prophetic or healing, that's what your highest ideal calls you to do in the moment. So don't limit your highest ideal by what you feel is convenient about yourself, especially in that context, you Christians out there. Quit it. Just move beyond that. Know that your highest ideal is much bigger than what you're limiting yourself to do or be.
Yeah, I remember that. I come from a spiritual background myself, and I remember that in the church that I belonged to back then, of people having sort of escalating the internal hierarchy of the church by the amounts of gifts they had, right? So if you had the gift of languages, but plus you have the gifts of interpretation, then you're a pro player, right? Sort of that. I mean, and it's very toxic. And for me, it was one of the things that drew me away from that that religious community. Was exactly that, because it felt pretty much like a mafia sort of thing, that you can't ever escalate if you're not if you don't have something that you can't actually improve by yourself or you can't work with. You just have it or not, right? So it's very toxic for your communities. And think of that if you belong to a religious community, to a spiritual community, and if it troubles you, actually think of it as something that can be improved instead of something that it is just the way it is.
Yeah,
right?
And actually you might think of it as a lie. Sorry. You might actually think of it that it's just deceitful. It's just meant to do everything that God didn't have his design to do as your hero of a hero that's a contributing hero. Like David's hero with languages, my heroes that contribute themselves. They are never going to be a part of this little hierarchy political system inside of a church that says, oh, I can speak in tongues and interpret, so I'm better than da da da.
Right. Or different gifts being better than others, like the prophecy gifts. I remember it being a big deal. Right. So this is part of something that I would like to discuss with you now, which is the fear identity and how to say it?
Societal?
Yeah, a societal level, right?
Okay.
So, for example, in these communities, you can find that as a representation of a fear identity in a community level, right? But you can also have a hero expression, a hero identity, or on a community level, like what we're living now with the COVID-19, right? That we were talking earlier, and I would like you to actually introduce this part.
Wow, yeah, this is great, because what happens is when there's trauma, our hero takes up about the first 15 seconds to 3 minutes, and let's say if you had your hand cut deeply, your first response is, well, maybe pain and crying out in pain, but then you figure out how to stop the bleeding, and then you figure out how to keep that from being infected, whether you have to wrap it yourself, put the salve on it, or go to the doctor. In the first minutes of that trauma, your hero is at work and it's doing its thing. Now, after a few minutes of it being all calmed down and your hero's been doing what it's doing, your fear identity is going to take over and go, whose fault is that? Now, if it's someone else's fault, that means they're a bad person. I need to get revenge. Or I feel blah. I feel whatever it is. I feel betrayed. I feel abused. Or I feel whatever it is that you feel.
Yeah. You start asking for retribution. Right?
Yep, exactly. So your fear identity takes over. It starts producing all this useless speech called gossiping, complaining, blaming others, being a victim, being superstitious possibly, like God must have done this because I'm a bad person. That's superstition talk. Just all of the useless speech that you can do comes out of your fear identity, and usually happens in response to the trauma that the hero takes over in the first few minutes. So just the discipline is let your hero hang on to it a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer. I'm suggesting, you guys are going to get really tired of this, gratitude. Find gratitude in everything you're doing, because that gash in your hand, that cut in your hand, if you're in a context of what your life is doing with gratitude and you're already feeling fortunate, you're not going to look at this as traumatic anymore. You're going to look at this as, oh, this is what happened in my life. All right, let's go on. Or there's some pain and suffering inside of gratitude that's going to be, you'll laugh it off. I made a mistake earlier. I said the next chapter is going to be about gratitude. That is the next chapter, isn't it?
Yeah, that's chapter 2.
Right, and then the chapter after that is where we're going to discuss the seven dimensions a little bit deeper. Yeah, gratitude is the key to your mental health and mental happiness and the success of your hero in your story, because you're going to be walking taller, you're going to be thanking people, you're going to be looking for opportunities to make a difference in society as your hero. So that is the opportunity inside of the trauma for your hero to actually be bigger than your fear identity. Now your fear identity is going to go kicking and screaming all the way, because it's going to be saying, no, I'm entitled to something. I was hurt. Pity me, pat my back, give me a hug, cry over me. No. Just be thankful that you have a life, and that cut in your hand wasn't in your neck.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of from what I understand of it, the way I understand it is when you go to the gym, right, and you start training on the gym, right. The first day everything is traumatic, like doing arms is traumatic, doing top, doing making ups is the hell, right. So everything is a trauma, but as long as you go, right, these things are not traumatic anymore, right? Yeah. So you learn to live with them and to just feel a little bit pain, feel a little bit discomfort for a couple of days, and actually down the road, it is not as harmful for your body. It doesn't harm as much as in the beginning, right? Yeah. So same for trauma, right?
Well, and the punchline, the objective for the gymnasium is to keep your body in trauma, is to keep introducing new trauma to make your muscles bigger, or to be in better shape, to go the extra mile, to run a marathon instead of just this little race. So the design of your life and the design of the hero is to accept trauma, is to look for the traumatic, not to create drama, but to use trauma as a way to build your life rather than to define your life, because people will let trauma define their life all day long. But you see people that experience trauma, like have their legs cut off in war, and they're not, and it doesn't define them. Yeah, it's noticeable. They don't have legs, but who they're being in the world isn't somebody who's limited by that. They're doing things to overcome, and they're actually use that trauma to define their victory rather than define their fear identity.
Right. And stay at ease, because if you have ever quit at a gym, as I have, right, I have good news for you. In the Life's gym, you can't quit, right? So there's no possibility of you not experiencing and growing through that trauma if you endure it. And if it's, some of you might have experienced very deep trauma, but think that's you're on the heavy training, right? So you're running for a high, how is it called in athletics, when you're a high when you're a professional sportsman or woman.
Right. You're at the highest level, at the
high level,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
There's a word for it. I know. Right. I know you have it there, and let me know in the comment if you have it there.
Put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. But if you have experienced heavy trauma, right? Don't create drama about it, or if you have already, get over it and start getting book about that, around that. Right. Okay, Eric, so let's jump into the next question, right? So next question actually is trauma as an opportunity for love and truth to take over. So this is sort of a following up to what we're talking now, which is taking trauma as an opportunity, right? To grow. And collective trauma as an opportunity to grow as a society, right? As a community. So how do we do that? Because we can't be responsible for ourselves, but it's difficult to think of as being responsible for a whole community or society.
Yeah, and wow, that's a good question, because all we can do is change ourselves. All we can do is do what this hero can do, and this hero isn't likely to succeed because of the fear identity, because of everything else that's telling this hero that it can't produce what it needs to produce to be the hero of your story. So it isn't likely that your hero is going to succeed. How is it likely that a society is going to succeed? We have to do this on an individual level. We have to look for opportunity to make a difference in the world around us, even if it's just our family, even if it's just our partner, even if it's, for now, your dog, or whatever it is that you are responsible for. Take up your responsibility a little bit at a time and keep expanding that. But and expand it in a way that's nothing's wrong here. Expand it in a way that nothing is insufficient. Just do it. Just do it because you love it. Do it because it's the hero in you that wants to do it, not the person in your mind that's shaking their finger and says you should have been doing this all along. No, just do it. Just do it because that's what needs to be done. And on a societal level, that's the tricky part, because the society reflects who we are as individuals, partly because we see it in the news media, and the news media is based on ratings that people will want to sell their commercials. So people want to sell their commercials on the ratings that are the highest ratings, and what we watch at the highest ratings is drama. We love watching people fail. And we love blaming other people and being the victim. COVID-19, perfect example of it. We're seeing people in the initial parts of it be heroic, taking very, very big measures of control. Every country on the planet is shut down, basically.
Right, pretty much.
Right. So, but in the initial time of it, we're doing what needs to be done to manage the crisis, to manage the trauma, where our medical teams, our doctors, our nurses are like the warriors that are on the front line of this battle, getting killed themselves for fighting this thing, and they're doing heroic things. And then you have people in the wings of that. I mean, I love watching the images of the police force or the fire department lining the hallways of when the medical people walk by, just applauding them, just really acknowledging that these people are our saviors. These people are really the heroes of our story. And these guys that are applauding, they're also the heroes of the story. The people that are in Italy, opening up their balconies and playing their instruments and singing songs from their open windows to try to keep their elderly neighbors calm through all this. They're heroes. The beer companies that are shutting down their breweries so they can make hand sanitizer with their alcohol, they're heroes. The pillow companies that are shutting down 85% of their manufacturing to make masks, they're heroes. So there's a lot of stories of what's going on with the hero response in the COVID-19. It's brilliant. But if you look at the news media, all we're looking at now is who to blame: China, President Trump, blah, 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 yakety, yakety. That's totally our fear identity. And why are they saying those things? Because we as individuals we love drama. And we want to see who the villain is. And we want to make them wrong. We want to judge them. And we want to be victim. And we don't want to be responsible for anything. So, yeah, I think to make a difference on a societal level requires a difference in your own life. I'm saying it starts with gratitude.
Yeah, it's sort of working as an expression of love ourselves.
Right.
And the hero core, right? Like, we don't need to be the whole hero in a societal level, but we just need to be an expression of what the hero would do.
Exactly.
Once at a time, right?
Yep, a little at a time. Right.
Okay, that's actually feasible.
Yeah. And fortunately, we got social media. Let us know what you're doing as a hero, even if it has nothing to do with COVID-19 or anything like that. That's great. Don't worry about it. Just share it with the rest of us. Put it on your Instagram.
Right.
We'd love to see it. Tell us. Put it in the comments.
Okay, so Eric, to start wrapping it up,
okay.
By the end of the chapter 1, you give us a list of hero exercises, right? Ways to become a hero and ways to engage with our psyche's hero, right? So those exercises, what for? How do they relate to the elements of love? And why is it that you invite people to create their own lists?
Right. The theme of the exercises for your hero is being bigger than yourself, is not being so egocentric. Like the first one is to actually look people in the eye when you say thank you. It makes you a bigger person. In Colombia, they say gracias for everything. Getting off the bus, gracias. Everything is gracias. When you say no to somebody that's coming up to beg from you, you don't say no. You say gracias, and that means get lost. And but if we actually take the word gracias or thank you and actually look at people in the eye, just to create something bigger than ourselves. Other ones are practice smiling with your whole face, open doors for people. Well, when you're socially distancing now, that's probably a good thing to do anyway. When you open doors for people, do it without expecting acknowledgement or things or gratitude. When you do something, or when you're in somewhere, leave everywhere in better shape, even relationships in better shape than you found them. So it's about being a bigger person than your fear identity. And again, you can make up your own rules for being exercises for being a hero, but that's actually going to be, just think of whatever it is bigger than yourself. Start small. That's what I'm saying. Practice smiling with your whole face, not just your teeth. All right. So, yeah.
I can think of one. Well, I was reading this list, like, okay, bring a list for yourself, something that works for you or in your context, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking of this in my context, in my group of friends. There are several people that belong to the LGBT plus community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is a non-binary people, right? So a hero exercise in this case is, for example, calling people by their pronouns. Like, if you're young, if you're in your 20s, 30s, you will probably certainly know someone who is a trans people, for example, or non-binary, right? And that people is surely appreciate a lot to be called by their pronouns, their chosen pronouns. And that's something that's bigger than yourself, because it's not natural, right? We are used to use language as female, male, and for if you look like a guy, then you're a guy, and I will treat you with male pronouns, right? Well, in English, it's way more difficult than that.
Yeah, it's really difficult, right?
It's something that is not natural, so it's bigger than ourselves. It takes up.
And I'm actually going to maybe, all right, there is a source of that is very egocentric and I don't care who it is. If you want to call me, hey, you bastard, that's up to you. And I don't have a demand. Like, if I'm demanding that you call me Eric Riley, sir, then I really don't think you should have to do that necessarily, because my motivation is to stroke my fear identity and to be more. I'm entitled to that. So I'm not really sure, because of the entitlement measure of that. I'm not really sure that I would have some conversations with them first. Say, okay, what are you entitled to be called? I'll call you that in the context of you and me. Now, if I see you on the street, I'm not going to have a conversation with you every time I see someone to find out what you want to be called, your pronoun, because that comes from entitlement. That comes from a part of your fear identity that demands something of me without me knowing that you're demanding it. But you're still going to judge me after I don't call you by the proper pronoun. So that kind of gets into an element of societal conversations that I don't know that they're heroic yet. Now, I know that to be considerate, that's always heroic. So yes, you have those conversations because you're being considerate. Now, unless someone just has a sign around their neck saying, call me this, I won't know, because I don't know. I mean, a non-binary person doesn't, they advertise in some way, but I don't know what level of the spectrum of binary that they are and what they need to be called, especially in English with 20 or so different pronouns we have for human sexuality right now.
Well, that's actually why I bring up this conversation,
right.
And I was expecting that kind of response from you, reply from you.
That's good,
because this is not your context, right? And this is something that you acknowledge, like, well, I don't know, right? And I wouldn't know how to call that, and that's why this is an example of your list does not have to agree with anybody else's list, right? It needs to come from your own context and from your own thing, right? So in my case, these conversations, it comes from what I understand as, the conversations that I've had around gender identity, right? Mm-hmm. And sexual preferences, and being a part of the LGBT community myself is gives me a sort of a context of empathy with that, right?
Right.
That I would consider it more important to ask for someone's pronouns than any other things, right? Like than some other things.
Well, how do you approach that then? I mean, really on a practical level, like if someone like me was going to say, do I just ask you what pronoun do you want to be called?
That's actually pretty nice. And most of the people, I think that response of I can't know from the beginning, and you will be rude about me not treating you by the right pronouns. That's actually that's something that actually don't happen that much. It doesn't happen that common.
Yeah.
What usually happens is that person says, hey, I would like you to treat me to call me by this pronoun, and people insist on I don't need to do that. And that's when you are being rude and the other person doesn't take it well, right? Because it's natural. Like if I'm asking you, hey, can you please speak louder because I'm half deaf, and you don't, right? Then you're
that's a perfect example, right?
To rudeness, right? So it's good to think of it in that way. Well, I'm not trying to impose this on either you or you as the viewer if you don't agree with it. But this is an example in my life and David Arismendy's life on how to practice being the hero, right? It's being considerate, which is what you just said. It's not bigger than that. It's nothing very special, nothing impossible. It's just being considerate, just as giving your seat to someone who's pregnant, because it will put them at ease, right?
So I was thinking of something a little bit humorous that happened like last year or year before. David invited me to a pride parade. And of course, I dress like this because I'm dressed like this. I'm this type of person, right? So he suggested that I might dress a little bit more, more festive.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I might be marginalized for being, looking too straight or too normal, which is such as paradoxical, I guess, for a group of people that are celebrating. Their identity group as being marginalized to marginalize someone inside of that group that wants to go to their parade looking too normal.
Yeah, right? in my defense, it was my first parade, so that's why I was in that mindset of take care of being marginalized. I do apologize for that. I do apologize for those of you who might find it. I mean, I hope you find it funny as I do now.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't against going. I wanted to actually see it, but I didn't want to participate in it. But I didn't get to. I didn't know so much because
So as for your question, that's exactly what you did. You ask what pronouns would you ask if you perceive that person might be part of the community. I mean, some people actually, and it is something real that when you ask someone for their pronouns, they might take it as an offense because if they're straight, right? Some people don't actually appreciate that you ask for the pronouns.
Right.
So it's impossible to please everybody.
Yeah.
But if you want to participate on that, that's an idea.
And as much as I want this to be a non-confronting book, there is going to be some confronting parts about it. In fact, probably in chapter 6 or 7, we actually cover I actually cover an area of our human experience about marginalizing, and it is about being marginalized by others. It's that we self-marginalize from people, and we normally marginalize into an identity group that fits our new identity or our identity. But even then, we don't really fit in. We don't really seek to fit into that group. We seek validation from that group, but I'm not really sure if we even seek connectedness in that group. It's just a big mystery about marginalization and identity groups. So again, chapter 5, 6. I'm actually going to
get there, and you will get there too with us.
Right.
Okay. Oh no, sorry. Did you want to wrap it up?
I just want to thank you guys for being part of this conversation, and whatever level you want to do to assess or judge us, that's your fear identity. But we ask that you just create yourself as the hero, identify who your hero was, who your hero is. The chapter of your hero, your psyche and the hero of your story is actually in Spanish, in English on my site, ericriley.com. Read it. I ask you who your favorite hero is, and actually think of it. Actually come up with one. And you can just read on and read fast, but I encourage you to actually start identifying something out there that is your hero, that you identify as your hero, that because it will automatically be personalized of what is accessible to you as your hero. And you'll also identify their problems as being some of the problems you face as well. And you'll also see instantly how they're uniquely qualified to be heroes and to be overcome whatever it is that they need to overcome will be the same thing that you do. And you'll see immediately that the likelihood of their success is 0%, just like your likelihood. So that's part of the story. We love redemption, but what happens before redemption? Failure, trauma, pain, shame. Those things happen. So if that's in your story, it's a good story. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, actually, just for you to know, your translator of the book, which is me, my hero, my favorite hero in this context of Alita being Eric's, my hero is Milo Touch from the Atlantis movie, right? So same thing. Nerdy guy, 0% likelihood to be successful, and yet there he is, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Ruling Atlantis. So, what about we go into the final question,
okay,
and we wrap up this episode.
Okay, yeah, I wrapped it up a little sooner. We got one more question. Hold on.
Okay, so the final part of the chapter 1 is an invitation to choose the hero over the fear identity, right?
Right.
To get the life we love, or
right.
a life we love. So I would like to ask you, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by a life we love?
Okay, there are psychologists call it positive emotions, but I think that these are elements of love. I think that there's things that we experience in life: intimacy, touching, music, confession, forgiveness. I have a list of 90 things, or more than 90 things on my website that are common elements of love that may not be any of your elements of love, but things that you do where you feel appreciated, where you feel good, you feel happy. I think that those are, positive emotions, but I think they're actually elements of something that reach further up to something that's higher, and that we can identify with that. We can put those into our life anytime. We can listen to music. We can be creative. For me, I love to cook. I can cook anytime as long as I got stuff to cook with. I feel, eating with each other, drinking with each other. That's elements of love. So there's things that you can do when you feel lost, when you feel like you're caught up in your fear identity. You can add those elements of love. You can call your friends up and say, hey, I'm lonely, let's go do this. Or you can listen to your favorite music for a little while. Or you can do whatever it is inside of your list of what elements of love, because those are the things that not only protect your hero, but also they're the things that sort of let your hero out for a little bit. Now, letting your hero out for a little bit means your hero can be out for a longer time than that. So that's the most important part, is that you start living your life by choice in the things that let your hero live the most. The first is telling the truth to yourself. Most of it is not knowing what the truth even is. And that's why I have this whole next chapter called Your Gratitude Superpower. So gratitude, when you're thankful, you're telling the truth about something. And if you don't know what the truth is, start being thankful about something, because to you in that moment, it's going to be true, whatever it is you're thankful about. So you'll start training your brain to start understanding what truth is. You'll also start training your brain to start understanding what you want and don't want. I've discovered that in a life of gratitude, I've started being a little bit more not quite as agreeable, because I know the things that I'm grateful for are things that I like, and the things that I'm not grateful for just sort of fall away. So inside of being grateful and continuing to be grateful, I start understanding what I want in life and start wanting them more, and start not wanting the other things, or start wanting the other things less. So when I'm talking to people, or taking my ground on something, I'm really grateful, but I'm grateful for the things that I'm grateful for, not the things that I'm ungrateful for. So
right.
I fill my life with those things.
And that's very important. This is the same as what Jesus said before, that here we would say gracias to a beggar to just reject, right? And that's not actually being thankful. Mm-hmm. So it's not being thankful out of nowhere, but right. Being thankful for something that you are actually thankful for, that you feel good, you feel that someone did right to you by that. And I understand that's what you mean by saying thank you is telling the truth, right? It's
right.
identifying something that is true to you as something good.
Yeah. And that's why I say look people in the eyes, because when you're looking people in the eyes, it's harder to tell a lie. So if you're saying gracias and looking someone in the eye, they actually get that you might be connecting with them in a way that's truthful, not just telling them to go away. So what it's going to do to you is change your mind too. Like maybe I need to give this person someone. Because if you're looking them in the eye, you're actually connecting with them as a human.
Right.
So, and you might even actually connect with them as a human that you can help. So, or not, but at least you have a choice.
Okay. So, Eric, thank you very much again for your time today, and thank you to all of you who have been with us in these 2 episodes. We hope to have you way longer, right? And down the road, you will find more episodes ahead of this book, and around the next chapters. Thank you very much, and stay connected with us for the next one.
See you guys later.
Later.
Bye-bye.